You think you are failing because you still doubt. But doubt is not the failure. The failure is the moment you take doubt for truth. You have imagined, you have assumed, and still, when the outer world does not move, something within you says, perhaps it is not mine. That sentence, that single quiet sentence, is the door through which the old self returns. Tonight I will give you something simple, not to force belief, not to argue the mind into submission, but to show you how to stop bowing before the evidence of yesterday and begin living from what you have already accepted within. The first thing I would have you understand is this. Your desire is not somewhere distant, moving toward you through space. The state in which your wish is fulfilled already exists. Creation is finished. Every condition, every expression of yourself already exists. You do not create it by strain. You enter it by assumption. You occupy it inwardly until the outer world, compelled by law, reflects what you have accepted as true. This is where most fail. They believe imagination is a place they visit and then return from to check whether it has worked. But imagination is not a place you visit and leave. It is the only reality there is. If I imagine myself provided for, chosen, at peace, and then rise from that inner act, still asking, but is it really mine? I have not assumed. I have only hoped. The world does not answer your wishes. It does not answer your fear. It answers one thing only, your state of being. Therefore, if you would see a new world, you must cease carrying the old name within your heart. I want to tell you about a man who came to one of my lectures. He had a problem he believed no force on earth could touch, not a problem of health, not a problem of money, though money was part of it. His problem was identity. He had lived for so many years inside a feeling of limitation so deep, so familiar, so confirmed by everything around him, that it had become the only thing that felt true about himself. He sat before me and said, "This cannot be changed." I did not argue with him. I told him only this, that no condition in his outer world could remain unless he from within continued to call it forth. The secret being inside him, the sum total of everything he had consented to, everything he had believed since childhood, was the only architect of what appeared before him. Not the world, not other men, not circumstance. Then he went away, and he wrestled with himself, not for a day, not for a week, for 3 years. 3 years of disentangling the feeling of I from the fixed beliefs he had worn so long they felt like skin. And then one morning he returned and showed me what those 3 years had produced. I asked him, "How did you know when the shift had happened?" He said, "When it finally stopped feeling like effort." That is the whole of the teaching. You can wear a feeling until it is natural. And the moment the feeling becomes natural, it will begin to bear fruit within your world. Not when you force it, not when you convince yourself with arguments, when it becomes natural, when the new feeling of I is no longer something you reach for, but something you simply are. Now let us speak plainly of the outer world. What you see before you is not your enemy. It is not your final authority. It is a report, the visible expression of what you formerly accepted within. A man may look at his purse and say, "I am poor." But he is not simply describing a number. He is naming himself. A woman may look at silence from the one she loves and say, "I am unwanted." But she is not merely observing silence. She is clothing herself in rejection. This is the danger. The outer fact may appear innocent, but the meaning you give it becomes your identity, and your identity becomes your world. So when the old condition appears, do not call it proof. Say instead, this is an old report. That one distinction will save you from returning to bondage. The outer world is not denying you. It is only showing you what you once believed long enough to make visible. Let it pass. Do not renew it by calling it truth. And this is where the practice begins. Not the practice of imagining harder, the practice of choosing differently, deliberately, every time the old feeling arises. Take a page, draw a line down the middle. On the left side, write what the outer world is asking you to believe. Write it plainly, without ceremony. The debt that has not moved, no matter how hard you have worked. The body that wakes each morning carrying the same pain. The person whose silence still reaches in and takes something from you. The position, the recognition, the opportunity given to someone else. Again, whatever the old report has been saying about you, write it on the left. This is not your truth. It is only the voice of what was. Then on the right side, write what your fulfilled assumption declares. Where the left says the debt has not moved, the right says I am provided for and what I need comes to me. Where the left says my body wakes in pain, the right says my body knows how to heal and it is returning to wholeness even now. If the left says that person has not returned, the right says I am someone who is loved and returned to. Where the left says the position was given to another, the right says, the right doors open for me. They always do. This is not pretending. This is choosing the state from which you will live. Carry this into your day. When the left side appears, do not collapse. Say quietly within yourself, that is the old report. Then return to the right side and dwell there, not as a technique, as your identity. Turn away from the old report, choose the new state, and live from it without apology. That man wrestled with himself for 3 years, not because the law was slow, but because the feeling of limitation had been worn so long. It took that much time for the new feeling to become more natural than the old. You may not need 3 years. You may need 3 weeks or 3 days. I cannot tell you how long, but I can tell you how you will know. When it stops feeling like effort, when the new feeling of I is no longer something you reach for, but something you simply inhabit, that is when the outer world begins to move. Not before, not after, exactly then. So tonight, take your page, write both sides, and every time the left side appears before you, deny it as your truth. Choose the right and continue living from it. For that which you accept inwardly must, by law, become your experience. Do not ask how. Do not ask when. Ask only, am I wearing the new feeling until it is natural? And if the answer is yes, rest. The work is done within. The world will follow. Now, let us go into the silence